your younger self wishes you'd been to. And I'd love to introduce you to Hannah. Hannah's a friend of mine, and I met her because I think 3 people said to me, "You've got to meet Hannah. You two would be really good friends." And so eventually we ended up in the same city and met for a coffee and really hit it off. And we did have a blind date. It was great. And Hannah is a coach. And has got her own business called Hello Sidekick, and you can look it up at hellosidekick.co. And she has developed a brilliant way of helping people find their purpose and their contribution in life. And so as we've been on this journey over the last couple of days, and I know I keep highlighting this, actually we sold out, which is amazing. But I just want to tell you that you can order some for people in your church, and we'll order them for you. Megan's smiling at me going, no one's confirmed that, but I'm just going to try and make that happen. So if you... so if you want to, you can go to the bookshop, tell them Joy said, and we'll see how that goes down. £2, or you can get 5 for £8. And like I keep saying, this is a really good thing that you could buy for people in your church who aren't here because they're working and they're already doing the things that God's called them on their front line. And I think this would really inspire them to understand the story that we're living in and the contribution that they can make to the world around them. So if you go to the bookshop just before the Derbyshire Suite and order one and see what happens, that'd be great. Right, well, I'd love you to give Hannah a really warm ground level welcome. It's her first time here. And over to you.
Thank you, Joy. I would rather be down here on the flat, but that does mean I can hardly see what my notes say, so I could just completely go off on a tangent. You can sit where you like as long as you're going to have the ability to chat to somebody else during the session. There's going to be a few chances for you to discuss what we're talking about. It's the afternoon session. You've all just had masses of chocolate cake, so we need to make sure you have a chance to keep awake and to talk with one another. As you can probably tell from my accent, I am from the Midlands. I've got black country parents, grew up just into Worcestershire, and now I live in Birmingham and have done for 20 odd years, which you can probably tell. As Joyce said, I'm Hannah, and I have a family. I have a husband called Sam. Sam works for Open Doors. So if you've heard of Open Doors, he spends his life he works particularly in supporting the engagement of Open Doors across the UK and Ireland, and gets to go to some very interesting countries as well as part of his job. And we've got 3 sons together who are 19 and 16 and 13, and a dog. My female companion is the dog. She's a girl, and that was the deal. That we were having a female dog. Okay, that's it. I spend a lot of time with boys, which is fine by me. So today we're going to be looking into this concept of the idea of purpose and calling together. That's where we're going to go with this, which is a huge concept. And why am I even here doing that? We all have our own stories, really, as to how we've ended up doing what we do. And a tiny little bit of my journey is that I have sort of discovered as I've gone through my adult life that it is an emerging picture of what God has for us to do. And I think if you take nothing away from today for yourself or anybody else, is that it isn't just a blueprint that you receive at 18, but you're constantly getting bits of the puzzle that help you get there. And as you're supporting other people, that's what they need also, to know that we don't know it all, and we don't know where this is going to go. I did a business degree and very quickly went into the kind of work that I thought was exactly what I wanted to do. It was an advertising company, and it was like, this is great, I've got this first job, it's exactly what I wanted. And actually, very quickly, I found that it wasn't what I thought it was. And there's a really clear moment I had where we were in an office. I think we were in London, actually, and I was pretty new there, but we were talking with PG Tips about whether they should keep the monkeys in their adverts or not. That's what the conversation was, okay? And inside of me, something happened, and I was like, I just don't care. And and you know what? I'm sure lots of people would care and find that very interesting, but I was like, I can't do this. It is my heart, whether it was the Holy Spirit, whether it was me, whether it was what, I don't know. I drove home and I said, I don't think this is for me. And I decided, rather rashly, although I think it was the right thing, that I was going to tell them that I was leaving. My older brother, who's not a believer went bananas. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing? You know, there's plenty of that. I don't know what I'm doing. Please help. Don't say things like that. And then I got involved in founding a charity, actually. So I've been involved in two charities in my younger years. One was one that was working very much with young people and women who were in relationship difficulty, and we worked in schools and we worked with those in crisis situations. And then I became a teacher. I decided I was going to go into teacher training, and I loved teaching. So I've spent 15 years working in teaching, there and thereabouts. And my last job in teaching before starting my own business was as an assistant head in a school which was incredible, in a really deprived area. In fact, where we live, it was where my children went to school. And for the years I worked there, it went from being a school that was in a real challenging situation, it was a special measures school, to becoming an outstanding school in a really tough part of the city. And the team that did that were incredible, and we were absolutely committed to those children having the best. They deserved the best, and that was the sort of the value. So what's interesting is a day came where actually things got very difficult. And I'm going to come back to this point. I'm telling you this now because it all sort of fits with, well, getting to know me a little bit, but the topic. A year in my life became very, very hard, and I'm sure you've all had those years where everything has been very difficult. There was a couple of significant losses, and my best friend had a stroke that meant that she could no longer talk or use the right side of her body, and was in rehabilitation 4 months. And she managed to survive, but her life was completely altered. And then there was some family diagnoses and other things, and then my job became awful, okay? If I'm being recorded, I hope it doesn't get played back to where I used to work. It got terrible, is the best way I can describe it, and no longer did it feel like the place it had done, and my values didn't feel like they fitted with where we were going, and I felt deeply lost. And I'd felt like I was absolutely doing what I was meant to do. And for yourselves and for many people that you are leading, discipling, they will be having those moments of, this isn't what I thought it was going to be, and I feel lost, I feel stuck, I don't know how to get out of this. What is God doing? Do I have a purpose? Should I, do I only get enjoyment 1 hour a week when I'm doing something else? And those are big questions for people that people are wrestling with actually all over the country. You know, as a side point, more people made contact with me in the pandemic for personal, purpose style, what am I here for, coaching than ever at any point before, because people started to ask themselves that question. And so, to cut a long story short, I did actually leave teaching, and 6 years ago started the business that I now have. And I do two things. Really briefly, I do two things. I work with individuals who are in that very place. For whatever reason, they're ready for something new, and they are wanting to find what's next for them. It might be a new career. It might be returning to work, having had children. It might be retirement. It might be they've been through a divorce or some kind of life event that's making them reassess life. And then I also work with corporates and businesses and teams and organisations, helping them work together better. But I will say to you that sounds woo and exciting, but I had no idea it was going to look like that 6 years ago, and I think that's also really important to say. When people say to me, what was the plan and the strategy, the honest answer is very little of one, and I had no idea it was going to go, and I hope that's encouraging rather than depressing. It's meant to be. So why are we talking about this? And the reason I said the younger self, the collab your younger self wishes they'd been to, is when Joy and I were talking about this, so many people say to me, I wish I'd known some of this when I was younger. And we have the opportunity today to consider this a little bit more and help those who are a little bit younger than us, as well as ourselves, be thinking about, how can I do this differently? How can I not learn this at 50? A lot of people come to me at 50 and they'll say, if I'd have known that when I was 20, I might have made some very different decisions. That's said to me a lot. So that's the reason why we've called it that. But we're also followers of Jesus, so we can add another dimension. A lot of the people I work with are not. And I'm trying to bring God's truths to them in a way that is relevant. But obviously we have another very important dimension to that today, which is where we're going to start. And so although we're talking about calling and purpose, it is not where we start. It is not the beginning. There is something that sits underneath that. I just want to spend a couple of minutes on that. And that is the idea of identity. Okay? Our identity comes before anything to do with calling and purpose. And when we start with calling and purpose, there is something completely missing underneath that. And I have to remind myself of this on a potentially daily basis. We can get so caught up in the do and the things that we might be called to do and be that we forget that there is an identity that we have in Christ that sits underneath that. Okay, 1 John 3. Hold on, I'm now running out of hands. I did actually put a little bookmark in. You'll know exactly what I'm going to say, but I'm going to read it out. So what kind of love the Father's given us that we should be called children of God, and so we are. I mean, that's it, okay? That is your identity. You are a child of God. You have his family name. Whatever you do, wherever you go, whatever you're involved with, whether you have a good day, bad day, fail at something, achieve at something, that doesn't change. If you've got 3 million Instagram followers or 2, child of God, same before the King. You are in his family tree. You have been bought at a price. You are co-heirs with Christ. You are seated on high. All of that is your identity, and that comes before calling and purpose. So I think as we're guiding others as well as ourselves, it is remembering that is the second point before. You've got to get that right first. And honestly, again this week, I felt challenged about that with God. I was reading in my this devotional that I'm doing, which was actually it was a Lent devotional, and I'm very behind. I haven't finished it, and it's clearly not Lent anymore, but that's honesty. And the yesterday's devotional was the one that was probably for 3 weeks ago, was about our emotions and the things that cause us frustration or disappointment or rejection, and being reminded that often that comes about when our identity is rooted in something that isn't the cross. And so when I'm struggling and when I feel, there was something that happened the other day, and I was doing a webinar and this person just left it, and I felt myself feeling wounded inside, and there's so many metrics in my work that I'm looking at all the time. Is it working? And as soon as I start to go there in terms of identity, I am a mess. So almost on a daily, hourly basis, I've got to keep reminding myself that that isn't it. Whatever we're going to discover together, and whatever some of these things might be, these assignments you have, and whoever you're leading, they need to know it's not it. Because if for whatever reason you are unable to do those things, like my friend who spent a year in rehab, like my friend who now cannot look after herself properly, her identity has not been adjusted, whereas the other things might. Okay, so I did want to just labour that before I got into the practical stuff I'm going to talk about, so you know that that's my heart, and it's the place that I have to come back to all the time, because otherwise it seems like God plays the part when actually the things that we're turning our hand to turn out like we want them to, and he's blessed them and there's favour. And then when that doesn't happen, we lose all our way. And I've had enough moments where I've lost my way, and enough moments to know it doesn't work out how we think it might, to know that I can't put my eggs in that basket. But that doesn't mean there isn't a calling and purpose. There is, okay? That is also very important. So, as we move on, what is calling and purpose? What is that idea? I love the word purpose, to do things on purpose. I like it. Calling is great, but it feels a little bit like somebody's got a call. What does that mean? What if you don't hear? What is that idea of doing things on purpose and with intention? And there are 2 bits to this. I'm going to tell you these 2 bits, then you're going to have a chance to have your first little chat. So when I talk to people, or I'm helping people think about purpose, especially those that know Jesus, the first thing to remember is we have a universal purpose, okay? Every one of us. Whoever we are, wherever we live, anywhere in the world, at any time, rich, poor, young, old. And this comes from the, what's it called? Catechism thing. It's got a name. It's Westminster, thank you, the Westminster Catechism. What is the chief end of man and woman? A man's chief end is to glorify God and to enjoy him forever. That's our universal purpose. So if we're stuck in discovering our sense of calling and purpose, and you feel like somebody or people come to you and they feel like their job feels mundane, there is a redemptive nature of anything that feels mundane, because if you're there to glorify God and to enjoy him forever, you can do that anywhere, anytime, any season. And so that is our universal purpose. It's why we're here. And it's why we're not, it's not over yet. And this is the thing that we do. Through our efforts, through our relationships, through our endeavours, we are glorifying God. So what does that look like? It's about representing Jesus, isn't it, in every environment. And that is our universal purpose. wherever we live. And I try to remind myself that I'm here to bring glory to God. I'm here to bring glory to God when I'm, for the umpteenth time today, wiping the kitchen services, which is what I feel my life feels like I do, or whatever it is that your version of that might look like. I want to bring glory to God in that. And again, I haven't got this nailed. I'm telling you the key principles that we have to keep reminding ourselves. So anyone in your teams, the people you're leading, this is a really important reminder. It is actually right there in front of you. If you have no more downloads from the Lord of what to do with your life, go glorify him in what you do. You can do that right now. But there is a unique purpose as well that we each have. And I do believe that that is biblical, okay? Some people have pushed back on this recently. I've read in different things, and also people who are not followers of Jesus saying, stop trying to search for purpose and just do it and it's okay. And I think it's a bit of a paradox that it can become this silly sort of idol that I can't do these things until I know my purpose. But I also don't think we should give up on the idea. So there's a few points around your unique purpose. The first is that it's specific to each of us, and that is biblical. If you read Ephesians 1 and 2, it's really clear that the Bible talks about things that have been prepared for us to do since the beginning of time. I find that amazing. There are certain things that only I can do and you can do, and they are prepared for you to do with your life. Some of those things will come down to the roles and relationships that you have. Only I can parent my children. And there are things that are mine to do. But there will be other things, other jobs, other responsibilities. By job, I mean, think role stuff to do, that are mine to do, that God knew. And as much as that might blow my mind, Ephesians tells us that that's the case. Okay? Now, this is important. I believe from just reading of scripture, but also my work with people, is that there is a sense of your purpose can remain the same. And I'm going to explain a bit more about this as we go, but the assignments change. That's where I told you a bit about my story. I felt really in my lane doing those different things I mentioned, especially when I was teaching in that school, but the assignment changed. And it has completely changed. And now if someone said to me, do you miss it? No. I don't miss it at all. But in many ways, I'm doing some of the same things in a completely different space. And that's why knowing the things that you do is more important than the space in which you're doing it in. Because the day will come when my children are all gone and they've gone off to live their own lives. What's my purpose? It's the same. My assignment's different. I'm not mothering them at home anymore. I'll retire. What's my purpose? Still the same. I'm not necessarily being paid for what I do anymore, but my purpose remains the same. And we can get hung up again on the vessel in where we're doing that. But my purpose is the same in every environment I am in, broadly speaking. And I help people when they do my course to really nail what that might be. Whether they're doing it with the Lord or without, they can get to that place and understand that. And I wrote one for myself. I think I wrote it down to tell you. In fact, I wrote it. I'll tell you later when we get there. Now, Proverbs 18 also says your gifts will make room for you. It's one of my favourite verses in the Bible. Your gifts will make room for you. And that suggests that we don't have to try and make room for ourselves as well. That doesn't mean we don't do stuff and make stuff happen. And I wouldn't have a business if I just sat at home and not tried anything and just expected everyone to come to me. That wouldn't have happened. But your gifts make room for you is a really important principle in understanding there's things that you have, talent, gifting, whatever word you want to use, that you have to nurture and invest in. Otherwise, that's just lazy. And we have to do that bit, but then it will make room for us. And as I've said there, it is a journey. And again, I told you my story for that reason. I'll hit another point, I know I will, and I do regularly about, am I doing what I'm meant to do? I've churned over whether I should have been in church leadership probably all my adult life. And I've always thought, is that where I'm meant to be? And I've asked that question. And I think I've made my peace with it now that there is no such divide. And it annoys me that I even have got into that. We are all in full-time ministry together in every environment. There is none of that. It's a totally unhelpful concept. If my purpose is that, maybe it will be employed by a church at some point, because the purpose remains the same and the assignment might change. Okay. Can you remind me what's on the next slide, please? Because I've forgotten. Right, I thought so. So I just want to give you a little pause moment in your little groups to think about where we've got to. You don't have to use these questions, but you can. What do you feel your current assignment is? So think about that rather than purpose. Do you feel any sense of overarching purpose of your life that connects to that particular assignment? Let me explain. So you might feel your purpose is to encourage, for example, as simple as that. So how do you do it in that current assignment? And how are your gifts making room for you? Okay? They're not necessarily easy questions, okay? I don't expect you to round this off now, but I'm just going to have a little pause moment, turn in, and have a chat with each other. Thanks for listening so far. Okay, if we can come back together. I am going to give you more time to talk to each other. Do you know, this is one of the brilliant things about Zoom, is that when you get put in a breakout room at Zoom, I have all the power. You press the button and everyone cannot continue their conversations. You are separated. It would be great in a classroom, wouldn't it, if you could just press the button like that and everyone has to stop talking. That was very good. I do want to get some feedback from you, but because I want you to talk a couple more times, can we wait and do that in a bit? There's a couple more sort of reflection questions, and then we'll take some time for some feedback and any questions you want to ask. I hope that was a helpful little break to think about where we've got to. So the next bit I want us to think about is, so how do we practically begin to discover? Because it's all well and good me saying, it's a journey, we have to find it out, you know, we don't always know everything we need to know, but there are things we can do. I'm a very practical person, and there are things we can do to try and help ourselves and help others. So this isn't just about you. Remember, in this room, think when people need you in this way, when you are leading them, how can we practically help them when they're on that journey? There are amazing resources and books out there, but there are also some simple things that you can do too. So let's have a think about some clues that we've got towards that personal sense of purpose, that part 2, okay? I'm going to talk us through these. So the first simple thing to think about when you think about yourself and others is, what do you enjoy? What do you look forward to? When I work with people, I've got a course which is called the Purpose Pursuit, as I mentioned. And when people do that, one of the things they have to do is spend some time looking at their diary and thinking about the things they've recently done or the things that are coming up in the next few weeks. That was very hard for those who did the course during lockdown, whose diaries were empty. I said, you're going to have to go further back in time. But for us now, in this stage, honestly, just get your Google Cal and look at the different things, get the meetings, the conversations, not just work things you've got going on, social responsibilities, cleaning out a cupboard, I don't care what it is. And ask yourself, what am I looking forward to out of that stuff? And what did I particularly enjoy? What are my passions? What are the things that I am leaning towards? I use a tool called Clifton Strengths, which is a sort of a personality profiling tool, which is brilliant in my opinion. But the guy who founded that talks about the wisdom of the body. And it's this idea of, what are you drawn towards? What, if you had 2 things that you could choose to do at any one moment, which one of those would you choose? There are clues to your purpose in that. If I would always choose to chat, then, I mean, I'm being broadly speaking, there are times when I would like to shut myself in a room, like particularly during the pandemic when I couldn't escape my family. I would have happily gone into a cabin on my own for a week. But normally I would not choose that. I would choose discussion. And so if I'm really honest with myself, at my best I choose discussion. That is a clue to something I should make sure I do. If I have too many days in a row where I don't collaborate, it's not good for anybody. Okay? Exactly, and the opposite will be true for others. This isn't a right or wrong. If you're somebody who needs deep thought time alone to do your best work, if you don't get to do that, you will not be bringing your best. And so therefore you're not bringing that part of your purpose. So there are real good clues in what you enjoy. It's okay to say, do you know what, Hannah, I actually really enjoy like organising a cupboard. Okay, well, great, fine. There is something about bringing order in that, okay? You are somebody who brings order. Don't decry things like that. Honestly, don't. Well, the things that you think, oh, that was satisfying, that little thing I did, ticking those things off my list, or whatever it might be for you. What was it you loved about that conversation? Or why did you like that meeting better than that one? Why? I sometimes say to Laura, Laura who's here, Laura and I work together, she's amazing, she's wonderful, and she makes sure everything happens as it should. I sometimes say to Laura, why am I looking forward to that piece of work more than that one when I'm essentially doing the same thing? Because those are really helpful clues as to why. What is it about that that's different? Can I encourage you, as well as the people you're working with, to be a bit more awake when you're looking at what's going on in your life? So I often review my week, just for a couple of minutes, or look at on a Monday morning as to what's coming up and think, why am I absolutely dreading most of this week? If you feel like that a lot, there's something to think about. We all have stuff we have to do we don't want to do. I am not by any means suggesting that purpose means full-on enjoyment of everything. It's part of my purpose to be a mother. That does not mean I enjoy a lot of the things that come along with the territory of doing that. It's not why, please don't hear that's what I'm saying. But there are clues to if I feel like, oh my gosh, this is exhausting me. There are different kinds of exhaustion. There is exhaustion because you are tired from something that I will be tired tonight, okay? But I will have also have that good tired feeling. Do you know what I mean? There is a tired which is like, take me now, Lord, tired, isn't there? And there is a tired which was, that was tough, but that was good. And pay attention, learn, write it down. Don't decry that little bit of learning, help other people do that. The next thing on there is feedback, okay? And there's 2 bits from Proverbs that I've mentioned. I'm just going to get my Bible so that I don't misquote the word of God. So Proverbs 18:20, I think I've got this ready. Says, Proverbs 18:21, death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruits. And the feedback from others can bring life to us. So having opportunity to encourage others, you doing that for others and receiving that is so important. Saying, I so see that in you. I love the way you do that. When you organise this or order that or speak to people in that way, you make them feel you do this, da-da-da-da. Use your tongue and let others do that to just bring life to you. I work with lots of companies, and culture in so many companies is that we don't praise people unless it's somebody's appraisal or they've done something unbelievably outstanding. Then we wonder why they're not as engaged as they could be. We need to create cultures, whether you're church leading, whether you are working in any other kind of workplace, where people regularly receive recognition. Specifically, I don't mean going, you're amazing, okay? That's not helpful, is it? If that doesn't help. What you need to hear is, what did you do that was great? And the data out there, people who look at engagement and happiness at work, we need, in some way, shape or form in our life, recognition about once every 7 days, whether you realise that or not. So think about how adrift people are of that. And it's not about just saying thank you, and it's not about going, you're amazing and gushing. Neither of those things are massively helpful. It's about saying something specific. So if you work in a doctor's surgery, saying to the practice manager, thank you for handling that tricky patient so well, you were so patient with him. That's the kind of thing I mean. I don't mean you have to go crazy, but regular, specific. Because what happens next time that practice manager has a tricky patient? They go, okay, I'm good at being patient. I can handle this. I can do this. That's how it works. You know, there are some people in my church, when I have spoken at church, who have given me some absolutely beautiful, specific feedback, and I've kept those text messages. And so when I speak again, I read it and I say, that's what they say you do, Hannah. Quick story on that. I once got asked to speak at a conference where I said yes, because it was a year of me saying yes to scary things, and I didn't know a lot about it. And then when I saw the social media advertising for this particular conference, the other speaker, it was me and him doing the morning sessions. He was like, I could tell you who it was, but just like a mega globally known person, and he was doing 2 mornings and I was doing 1. I was like, what is this horrendous thing that I am now doing? I'll tell you, it was John Mark Comer, and I was like, oh great. And and I got this message from a friend who'd screenshotted the social media. There's a picture of him and a picture of me, and she was like, what is this? I said, I don't know, and if I had known, I wouldn't be doing it. Now, the reason I'm mentioning, and that's the honest answer, but my point there was that what I was doing was comparing myself to somebody else's giftings, and I can't do what he does. And again, going back to what people say, what do you do when you speak? You do this. You do that. Staying in my lane was the only way I could actually handle that situation. Because I remember in worship before I spoke, I lay on the floor. I couldn't actually get up off the floor until I was like, Lord, you've got to do your thing, because I am battling a massive amount of imposter syndrome. So when you have the words of life, that's how it makes a difference. Proverbs 25. The purpose in a man's heart is like deep water, but a man of understanding will draw it out. And that's you, or woman. That's what we can do. So it says here that our purpose is like deep water. It isn't easy, but we can draw it out, and we can be that for each other. So we have that responsibility to call out in people what we see, okay? So we have a role in people's lives. Wisdom of God and his favour. Now, this is that idea of, what is God saying? How is he speaking to you? What is he leading you towards? Where can you see a sense of favour? Where is there a feeling of, when I do this, he seems to show up and be alongside that? What am I reading about? What is resonating with me? Prophetic words people have given. That whole side of it is the wisdom of God. But actually, sometimes we don't have favour straight away in the things we're called to do. So don't expect that it means that all doors fling wide, because that isn't true either. As I've said, I'm married to Sam, who works for the Open Doors. There's a lot of things that the persecuted church deal with which would not suggest favour. So don't confuse success in quite that way, okay? Although it is important, and I do mention it here, it is only one part. Okay? Pain. It's a funny one to mention. Our painful experiences are forever part of our story, and they will be part of your purpose. The things you've battled, or the people you are leading have battled, there is a redemption available to that shaping and being part of their story. And I don't mean that means they have to work in that sphere of where their pain has been. That's not what I'm saying. But the work of God in those moments of pain is really part of our purpose and who we are. I heard Mo Gaudat, I think I've said his name, Gaudat, I don't know how you say it, interviewed recently on a podcast. He was a very interesting man. Go read about him, Google his life story. He lost his son at the age of 21. And he died in a very he was having his appendix out, so what's the word I'm looking for? Thank you, that's the word I wanted. A very routine op, and 5 things went wrong, and he lost his son. And he was the chief something or other for Google X, like mega, okay? Hugely successful. And his whole life's work now looks at happiness and contentment. Very fascinating man. And he did this piece of work with Google where they asked people, they created something called the memory eraser. And they asked people, if we could take your point of pain, your worst point of pain from your life, but it would also mean that everything that came from that would also be, would all those doors and, moments that would go, would you choose to erase? And something like 97.9% of people said no. Obviously, you would say yes if you were going through the moment of pain, and obviously this is hindsight, and it's people whose painful moment they're talking about in their past. But the reason people say that is because it does shape who we are, and things come from it, and we know that actually we'll never be the same again. I had a fundamental change in who I was in that year when I had a very difficult year, and I talk about myself as almost like pre and after that year. I'm not the same. And I thought I was totally losing myself in that year, but I'm built on a different foundation. And so I wouldn't undo it for those reasons. And yet, does that make sense? So think about pain. Your values. Now, we have our values as people who are followers of Jesus, but there is more specific than that. There's some great tools out there. If you just Google lists of values. I think a guy called James Clear, he's written something on his website where there's about 25 words for different values. I mean, literally you can find them anywhere. I'd encourage you to do that and go through it and say, these values really resonate, these values somewhat resonate, these values don't particularly, until you get it down to a five values. 3 to 5, something like that. Because we want all the values, but the reality is we can't have all the values, and we don't live by all the values. But they can act as another sort of, if your value is integrity, or a value is fairness, and you're like, gosh, that one really gets me, it's another clue to what you're bringing to the environment you're in. if a value is inclusion and that makes it to your top 5, they're all godly values. You know, if you read the list, it's not like you look at them and go, this is a bad one. There might be a couple that you feel are, you know, questionable, but when you really push comes to shove, what are those things that you are, the values that you live by? It's another really good tool. And then results and success. Now, again, I say that with a bit of caution that we don't always see the fruits of what we do, but at some point people are going to see and want us to do the things if it's something we're called to do. Doesn't mean it's easy, doesn't mean it's not a whole load of graft and a lot of work in the background, but at some point there will be some success, there will be some results in that area, and you think, oh, that's starting to work. And, you know, if painting and decorating your thing, the results and success will be that you can actually paint. It would be no good thinking that was part of your purpose, if to be creative, if actually you can't, you know, actually paint the walls. So clues to purpose include things that we love to do or enjoy doing. What do other people say, and how can you do that for others better than you are, being specific and calling out purpose? What is God saying? Where is our pain part of that story? What are your values? And where have you seen, or where is there some level of result and success? There was something I was going to say actually that I forgot to say, and I like this. William Perkins says that everyone is called and all callings are equal. And I just think that's just a great thing to consider in this. You know, we're not looking for some sort of clue to a better purpose than somebody else's, or a more meaningful existence. We're just trying to make the right choices with our time. I say yes to a lot of the wrong things. I'm going to come on to that in a moment. I'm still learning about that. But when you are more and more clear on your purpose, you can learn to think about, how am I going to spend the finite amount of time that I have? Somebody said that from the stage this morning. We've got X number of years. How are you going to spend them, you know? So for me, both in terms of equipping yourself and equipping others, whether you've got any more tools at your disposal, these are some things that you can work through with people. And I want to give you a couple more questions to think about now, which are, that's a mistake there because that's the same question, so you shouldn't say that. But there is, shouldn't say that. I don't know what's happened. Ask yourself about those things I just said, or the quote from Glennon Doyle, which I do want to mention. Glennon Doyle is not a follower of Jesus. Has anyone heard of her? Yeah, she's written some very popular work in what's her book called? Untamed. But I think this is amazing. She says, the thing that breaks your heart is the very thing you were born to help heal. Every world changer's work begins with a broken heart. What breaks your heart? So that's a question that you can think about when we think about the pain part. So, yes. Oh, the guy. James Clear has got a list on his website. James Clear is brilliant for all reasons, but he's definitely got a PDF on his website about values as well. He's got lots of good content. Okay, so turn in and have a think about those areas we've talked about, but also that idea around pain as well. A few minutes. Let's come back together. I've got one last section, and then you can ask me if you've got any questions or give some feedback. The last thing I wanted to mention was, I sort of touched on it before with my John Mark Comer debacle. How do we stay in our lane? And I like that phrase, the idea of staying in our lane and being who we are. But we spend a lot of our life thinking about what other people are doing. We compare. There is an inbuilt sort of desire to compare. And in fact, there is a reason we do that. We're trying to see how we're doing. You know, it's part of human culture. There are reasons why we mainly compare to people similar to us or in a similar situation. I would never have had a John Mark Comer comparison wobble had I not been in a situation where he was directly, I don't normally go around going, oh, I wish I could be able to speak like him. You know, it's out of my frame of reference. But on that occasion, it was a thing. Normally, we spend a lot of time looking at what people around us or similar life stages or similar ages or people who are in our field are doing. That tends to be what happens. And we also get that, as you know, we get a filtered view of everybody else's life all the time, which can cause us to want to stray into what other people are doing, and a lack of contentment, a lack of satisfaction, jealousy, comparison, feeling like an imposter, all those things. And there are ways we can help stay in our lane and try not to just grab at every possible opportunity or think there's FOMO around this idea of purpose and stuff, that if I don't say yes and make sure I'm in every environment that's available to me, I'll never get asked again, they'll all be over. I've got my own business, so I have a challenge when I'm asked to do work that I say yes for scarcity reasons, because I think, well, what if nobody wants me in July and then I'll have no money? And there is a principle to that, but you have to learn to move out of that space of scarcity and think, I've got to just do what's in front of me and what I can manage. And there are a couple of things that you can do, again, or also this is a way of support. This is a global human problem. So anyone you're leading or pastoring, this will be an issue for most. I reckon 80% of us do this, and the rest aren't telling the truth. No, I'm kidding. Not everybody does, but I think a good proportion do. So it's one thing I talk about with people, and again, if people get involved with my course, I encourage them to write a purpose statement. So when they've really spent some time digging into this, trying to create a bit of a statement for their life. And remember, it's not assignment-led, it's life-led, so that it fits every season. I had a go at this for myself. I wrote it down on here for you. And I tried to use some of the stuff that I've done as a bit of a purpose statement for me, and I put this is mine, okay, and it could probably do with another draft. All in, wife, mum, friend, follower of Jesus, speaking with and giving others courage, clarity and confidence, making the world a little bit fairer and bringing joy to the room. And you'll see there are no apart from my lifelong assignment of mom, being a mother, it's not assignment based there. It's about, in any situation I'm in, am I bringing courage and clarity and confidence to people? Am I trying to make the world fairer? That's really important to me. My sort of get up and go comes from the lack of fairness in the world. And am I being fun, and am I bringing some joy? If I can use that as a bit of a benchmark for things and for a life guide, it helps with that next bit. What am I saying yes to and what am I saying no to? So if it's straying too much from that, is it a good thing to be saying yes to? Because we can find ourselves, grabbing at stuff because we think we should be there, and then the things that we should be saying yes to, there's then no room or time left for. There are times to be saying yes to stuff, and you're in a season when that you need to try lots of things. But when you're somebody talked about it in this way, when you're to use the language of this person who was speaking from a business perspective, he said, when you're on the way up, you need to say yes to as much as you can because you're learning as you go. But once you've got the idea of what you're doing, it's about saying no to nearly everything. And it's a bit like that, I think, when it comes to the idea of thinking about your purpose. Try stuff out, and as you get the feedback and the learning, we have to get ruthless about what we say yes to. Ruthless. Now, that does not mean, really clear a caveat, that I'm going to say at church, I'm sorry, no, I can't put the chairs out because it's not part of my purpose statement. And I don't do the dishwasher. No, we don't do that. That is not what I'm saying at all, and I hope you know that. We do things that serve, absolutely. But if I try and plug every gap, or I say yes to things, I can't then plug the gaps I'm meant to be plugging because I've got no time left. And Laura will know that I'm awful at this, so I need to stop talking about things I'm not doing very well. But we need to think every time we say yes to something, we are saying no to something else. You are doing that. You might be saying no to boredom. You might be saying no to stagnation. You might be saying no to purposelessness. But you might also be saying no to sleep, no to your family, no to connection, no to peace of mind, all sorts of things. So think carefully what you're saying no to when you're saying yes, and decide if your yes is worth that yes, and have you said no to what you need to say no to. Couple more points is thinking about, again, are you meant to be in a stretch? There's different ways of being stretched, and there are moments for the comfort zone. I mean, this is a preach in itself, so I won't go there. But essentially, being stretched in your area of purpose and gifting and talent is important. That is how we grow. So if I was a runner, let's say I run a little bit, and I said tomorrow I'm going to go out and do a marathon, but I'm only currently running 2K around the block, that is an inappropriate stretch. A bit like me being asked to preach alongside John Mark Comer, inappropriate stretch, right? An appropriate stretch would be I'm going to do park run. And then the next appropriate stretch might be I'm going to do a 10K, right? That's what you do to push yourself to get better at a talent. Same goes for any kind of life gifting and life talent. If you're learning, you're good at speaking into people's lives, you've got to stretch yourself because the muscle won't grow if you don't do that. And that's appropriate stretch. In my world as a strengths coach, I suggest to people that it's not appropriate to keep trying to stretch yourself in areas that are not really your thing to do. We don't need to be brilliant at everything. Okay? We don't. I really don't sign up to that. I'd like to be, but I don't think it's true, and I think it's unhelpful, and I think you only, like I said before, learn what you're good at and become brilliant at it. Don't try and be brilliant at everything because you will eliminate the good in what you could be incredible at by trying to do that. So that's the right kind of stretch. And then there are times to be in the comfort zone. We haven't had a lot of opportunity for that in the last couple of years, really, for many of us, because it's been so challenging. But we do need periods of time when we come back out the stretch to recuperate, but the magic doesn't really happen there, as cheesy as it is. You have to go there and recuperate, but you only grow by being stretched. You only grow by saying yes to something that's a little bit wobbly for you. If you're not having that feeling ever, that this is pushing you a bit, I would encourage you to think about how you can get yourself into that position again. If you are somebody who loves to learn and you're not stretching your learning, you need to be doing that. If you're somebody that loves to write and you're not writing, you need to be stretching yourself in that way. Whatever it might be, I could give you umpteen examples. We need to feel a level of stretch in the areas that we're being called to and gifted to, because then we grow those muscles. And the last thing I wanted to say, really, this is my last point for you to have your final chat, and then I'm just going to get some feedback from you. And I did feel as I was preparing this morning my final thoughts that God wanted to really remind us about seasons of life, and that I felt some of you might be in a time of transition, or you might be leading people who are. There are different seasons in life. There are maintenance seasons. There are times when we are keeping things going as they are. We're recuperating and we're maintaining what is. And then there are times for growth again. There are times when we go again and we push hard again, and it's a time for doing something we couldn't do before. Using that running analogy, it's if you normally run 10K and you're maintaining that, there's a time when you stretch yourself to say, actually, I'm going to get 5 minutes off my time. And that's the growth period. And there are times of transition, which are some of the hardest times in life. And I work with a lot of people in those moments of their life. And there may be some of you that are feeling like you're in transition. As a person who's given birth to 3 children, there's a point in labour which is called transition, okay? And it's been one of the most profound lessons of my life to think about how that relates to life. Transition is the time between one thing and another, and you can't see the new thing yet when you're in transition. That's the important thing. When you're in transition, there might be a clue and an idea, but you can't yet see it. And when you're in it and you're really in the thick of transition, you feel really lost. You feel like God has left you. You can, or you can feel, I've got no idea what's coming. And if I let go of what I've known, I have no idea what is next. And when you're having a baby, naturally, okay, there is a moment that midwives, have we got any midwives in the room just before I start teaching a grandmother to suck eggs? No, okay, so I'll say, there's a time in labour which is called transition. And many, many women in that point will say to the midwife or their loved one, can't do it. I can't do it. And I remember going, I had very quick labours, I'm very lucky, but I do remember looking at my midwife and going, you don't understand. I can't do it. I just can't do it. And you feel like you have lost perspective in transition. You lose perspective of what you've known. There is a baby in there. The baby is going to get out. You forget that. You forget you've got this far. Everything you've done so far feels pointless. Okay? And that's what happens. And for those of you that haven't experienced that, try and listen to what I'm saying about life. Because what the midwife said to my husband was, she doesn't know this, but she's actually really close and the baby's just getting ready to come. She sort of said it over my head because I was being crazy. And she said, he's coming. He's really nearly ready. But I didn't know that. And they know because they've got experience that that's what's occurring. And I'm about to start pushing and the baby's about to come. And I felt at square one. And I just wanted to encourage you that that is a thing that happens in our life at different moments and seasons. And we feel like everything we've known has gone. We've got to go that way. There's nowhere else to go. But you have no idea what that looks like, and you think, no, you don't understand, I can't do it. And actually, as you know, cliched as it sounds, you are much closer than you think in those moments, and something is going to come through, and light is going to come, and you will know. And please encourage those people you're leading when they're in those moments that this is a thing. You know, it's okay, this is what happens, and we have these moments when we lose our way. So when we're staying in our lane, trying to stay in our lane, we can really begin to know what our purpose is and say, is it that? If it's not, I'm not going to do it. Is it time to be stretched? Is it time for the comfort zone? And what kind of season am I in? Now, before we finish, I was going to give you another chance to chat together, but I just do want to make sure if anyone wants to ask anything from the floor, we've had time to do that. The questions you might want to ask yourself at a later point are, what season do you feel you're in? Do you feel like you're in your lane? Do you feel like it's time for stretch or time for comfort? What good things are crowding out the great in your life? That's a good question to go away and think about for a while. And do you feel you're living aligned to your purpose and values? You might want to put those in take a photograph or put them in your journal and spend some time with God on that. But before I hand over to Joy to maybe see if there are any questions in the room, which there may not be, and that's totally fine, it has been a real privilege to be with you today and to talk about this. And thank you for being with me. The nodding in the room so helps. The feedback really helps that people are with you when they're taking something in. Just that this is, as I said before, this is something that's going to crop up in our own lives and in all the people's lives that we're leading over and over again, because it is the stuff of life. But hopefully there's some things in there that give you some tools and some ways of looking at it you might not have done before. Joy, do you want to just come back up and see if there's anyone who wants to burningly say something or ask a question?
Great. Well, let's thank Hannah for her input so far. And also just to say that on her social media, you can see the information about the purpose course. And I've got a friend who's done it, and it really changed her life. So I really recommend you having a look at that if you are interested. Has anyone got any questions? Anything they'd like to kind of tease out? Go on, it'd be boring if no one did.
That is a great question, because I've written a young adults version of my course for that reason, because it doesn't get taught, and we're working on trying to get it there. To help so that it's not just about churn, exam, do this, but a bit more of self-understanding around whether this is a good choice, because it's not taught for more than about 45 minutes currently at school. I mean, schools is a broad space, isn't it? I think it can depend, and I think that there is so many pressures on schools. I would also probably want to push back that it's also the family's responsibility to equip our children for the world and the church and our communities. School can do so much with what they've got, but I have written a version of my digital course to be used with sixth formers, so that they can be give an opportunity to talk about some of the stuff we've done today. Please pray about that, because we're trying to find ways to get that into schools.
That's very good. Anyone got any other questions?
Yeah, that's a really big question, isn't it? And I suppose from my own personal perspective, one of the things that, as I said, breaks my heart is when the world doesn't feel very fair, and that people don't have the same starting place in life. And when I left teaching, I thought I'm giving an example here rather than an answer. When I left teaching, I thought, I'm not doing that anymore. And that was literally the reason I did it, because I was in this school that was, very like that. And I've thought hard about how I can do that in the phase that I'm in. And I think I would encourage you that when you feel like that and you've got a bit of a clue, is to start by just pushing some doors. It doesn't have to be in a paid capacity in any way that some of these things are. That's another fallacy. It's not about whether you paid for it or not at all. So somebody who did my course, she was starting to feel like she worked as a COO of a business actually, and she said, I want to be giving back a bit more. And she just pushed a few doors. She has now started working with the Girls Network to mentor a young girl who's interested, from a more underprivileged background, who's interested in business leadership, and she meets with her every month. And that isn't necessarily it, but it is a beginning towards what she wants to go towards. So one door leads to another, leads to another. And I also don't think anything's wasted. If you do something, you think, oh, that was rubbish, or I don't like that. It's not wasted. That's learning. Don't do it again. You know, you don't do that. That wasn't for me. But you try environments and you gather bits of knowledge as you go, and the pieces come together. I think that's maybe a broad answer.
That's great. I think we've got time for one more question. Was the lady just here? Strengths.
Tool. Yeah. If you message me or get in touch, I can show you where it is. But I use a tool called Clifton Strengths. It's a profiling tool. I just think it's the most aligned to thinking about what do you love and how do we take that and then invest in it. Other tools are available. I don't own it. I make no money out of that, by the way.
Great. Great. Well, it's free time, so I think we're back in the back for dinner. Dinner is at 6:30.
Dinner.
I know. Everyone's still full from that chocolate cake. And then the main celebration tonight. So let's thank Hannah again.
Thank you.
Yeah, can we have the last slide back up with the questions? Yeah, great. Just one more thing that we're doing. Hannah's purpose course, but also as part of Ground Level, we've written a purpose tool to help people in our churches. It's really simple, and it's probably really basic in comparison to Hannah's long course. And so it's just a 2-session course, and we run it at Alive at the moment, but as part of the work with GLX and the Mission of God, through into the end of the year, we were going to do it at Awaken, but we'll have to find a different way to kind of roll it out, is to start releasing and training church leaders to help you to get this into your churches so that you can release the people in your congregation and help them find their purpose as well. So if you're interested in that, we will be like promoting it through the Ground Level kind of streams, what channels, what do you call them? But if you're really interested and you don't want to miss it, I'd love you to email me, joy@alivechurch.org.uk, if you've got like a special interest in it, and we'll just make sure that we definitely get the information to you.
Can I say one thing? If anyone knows anyone who is interested in my course, it is doors open at the moment till the 9th of May. It runs as a cohort. You do it together online and is a coaching community, so you can't just do it when you like. But if anybody knows anyone who would benefit from that and they don't have the finances, you've got my details. Just drop me a message and I will make it available to somebody who wants it and needs it and doesn't have the finances. So please keep that in mind, and I really mean it.